This again, take
If I back up way over here, my iPad would
it's okay. No worries. All right. So Michele,
sweating.
you're sweating?
Yes.
Hot. So how do you feel the lesson today went with these third graders?
Well, my first thought was, I had a plan. I was teaching them about following your plan, and I did not follow my plan after a little while.
Okay. So what do you think went well?
Having them see a piece of writing that was in the script that was not written well, that needed some help, but there were parts that were okay. And that part, having them have that piece went okay. Maybe the beginning, talking about the revision, what does that mean? Giving them that piece to tie to. That when you're doing this piece, you're looking at it a different way, making that connection, helping make that connection. In the checklist, I really like the checklist. They want that for future writings. I think that guided them in their what I'm supposed to do, because that was pieces that I talked about in a different way, but they had it visually and can check it and
Okay.
go back to it.
So in thinking about your objective today, what was your stated objective?
Was, did they follow their plan? You know, revising to see that you followed your plan.
And
But maybe my objective needed to be broader than that. I don't know if that was the right objective for the lesson.
so today, at the beginning of the lesson, you talked about that plan. You know, what is their plan? I think that was clear. How do you feel that when they went back to their desk, in their place out in the writing, do you think that they were at a place to know what their plan was?
Many of them know.
Okay.
Because they hadn't had enough time to write that story. They're informational. Many of them just had their plan in one sentence. So they couldn't even check to see if they followed their plan yet. So had I known that as the classroom teacher, known that they weren't that far, I don't know that I would have done today's lesson yet. There would have been more time to write.
At the beginning, you said to them that they were going to, you said today you will work on revising a piece that I wrote. How did they do that? How did they show that revising?
They didn't. They only did it verbally. That was where my plan went, so.
Okay.
Because they did it just in their turn and talk. They only did it in the talking piece. And telling me what they would change, but not actually physically in the writing changing it. Okay. Ian was. He went and got his pencil and did it himself.
Be sure that you knew what to change. So what would you do differently with that part?
Well, after I started going with that, it was more to get them to see those parts. I think I intended for them to then go to the green piece, but we ran out of time. So we were going to go to the green piece and then scrawl on there and write on there, but because of time, we didn't do the green one. And so that yellow, and maybe I didn't need the green one, maybe we just could have done it with the yellow one and not even gone.
So where do you feel, today, when you were doing that, having them do that revision, or, because they were orally revising, where do you feel you were in the gradual release? Of doing that revision piece of your writing? What was your goal?
There was not really a model. I didn't model it. They went to the partnering and just sharing it back with me. To independent. So there wasn't the physical actual doing it. I missed the modeling of it. I didn't do one myself and talk through it. My yellow one I should have done myself.
So what would that look like?
I would to take their comments and go through and physically move that piece of writing and change it with their suggestions.
They could have continued their oral turn and talk about places that you could have revised.
And maybe even before that, I could have just done it and talked through it.
Mhm.
Here were pieces where the intro was for, here were, I skipped that whole piece.
It was fun for me to see your excitement, back with the kids. I think it was great, really great, that you were able to pull from something that, well, I think every one of them knew, because they were all here last year. Yeah, and so, they all knew about that, many of these kids you had in your classroom. But I think too, your excitement about that and their excitement about that showed, and you were definitely, looked like you were having a great time with them and sharing that. I think that it was great to see how many of them, they really wanted to critique your piece of writing. And you did things that allowed them to do that, making misspellings and things like that, which was great for them to see. And they could pick it out.
Well,
Did you feel?
Yeah, that's what they were, when I was listening in, they were looking at, she didn't capitalize that I, she spelled there's an E on Martha, it shouldn't be. And I thought, we are not, and that's what we do too, when we look at a page, we wanna fix all those things. And that's why I said to them, we're not looking for those pieces, we're looking for, did I follow my plan? I felt like I followed my plan a little bit better than they had intended, or that they thought I did.
Okay.
I knew I wasn't clear with, and I purposely only put Painted Lady in there one time, and that wasn't clear, but
So where did they have the most trouble on the checklist with your plan? Or with the plan, I should say, that you made, looking back at it?
Probably with that, there was the clear organizational piece, that it did go through those stages. That second bullet, it did follow that plan. It wasn't elaborate, and maybe didn't, have a lot of details in there, but it did do what my plan said I was gonna talk about stages, so it did do that. Anyway, they didn't talk about that, they pointed out, I can do the
Right.
pieces that intro was for in there,
Yeah.
and the ending was for.
But those are things too that they'll look at the end of the checklist, they'll come back to.
But in retrospect, you want them to do that to their own piece. You want them to be critical of their own piece and point out, the checklist, you want them to fix this, all that too.
How about talk time? That's one of our goals, or something that I also said that's a struggle. How do you feel the teacher time versus student time was today?
Oh, it was way more me. And right at the beginning, I felt like that more, and then
you think in that revision, had you done that, taking your piece of writing, do you think that would have been more additional opportunities for them to talk with their partner about things that you could, going through the checklist, elaborate on, or looking back at that plan? In just thinking about that.
But I think though, if I would've went through and modeled it, then I would really feel like it was totally my talk time too.
Right. But during that time, you're at what stage? You know, and thinking about gradual release, where would you be?
Which you are, talk time.
Yeah. So you're doing the think aloud. You're sharing your thinking with them while you're revising.
There's a lot in this lesson. I mean, we all kind of think there's so,
Yeah.
How do you do that in 20 minutes?
Great question. Yeah. Would you break, you know, if you, let's say, I mean, these were your kids and you knew that their stories were done. They've made the plan, they followed their plan. Okay, so let's say they have that done.
And maybe I didn't know to go into revision. Maybe I didn't need to talk about revise or revision and what that meant. But I didn't know what they knew about that. That piece could have been left off had they already learned about revision and revising and knowing that. And that could have been shorter, but when they had to have them turn and talk about it, we could have just gone into what they
How much was that covered in
here's our
previous
plan.
lessons? I can come on camera.
There was the one,
So it
anchor,
had
there was
charts.
another lesson,
Yeah.
yeah.
So they knew, and when you
About
did
that.
the turn and talk, tell, you know, about that revise, revision, they were able to, I think they were pretty clear, at least the ones I heard. Did you hear anybody that you weren't feeling?
And
didn't
maybe
know
I
what
don't
that-
even need to go back and reiterate what they said to each other, just move on from there. You know, I hear that you're clear about revision and what it means, and move on. I always feel like I need to have them state what it is that they said to their partner, or at least have somebody or one person or. Say that.
You did a great job, I think, of trying to push Zach, you know, to give that evidence back, looking back at your writing, well, what would you have done? He didn't really,
He
you
was
know,
not going
he
there
forgot
with
what
me.
he told Bennett, but.
Yeah, he was not going there.
Yeah, but, I think that, so how could you?
But as a teacher, then that told me, he doesn't get it, and I know I gotta hone in on where he's at in his writing.
Do you think he really didn't get it, or do you think he just didn't want to share it with everyone?
I think he raised his hand just to talk to Tanya, just to be in touch.
Needs a little time.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I don't know. if
So
he
where
knows or not.
where would you go next? So in tomorrow's lesson, where would you go next?
I would just give them time to write tomorrow. They need time to write.
Would you have them writing and thinking about, or would you have them put the checklist away?
I don't know. They seem to kind of like that checklist. They seem to like that, almost like that brought them back to what I need to have in here. I don't know about that because what was the little girl's name? The long-haired one that was Lucy. Yeah, she really wants that, and that is kind of like her little guide. She liked that. And she goes, oh, now I know I need to add more. So I think for some of them, having
Helped
that
in the-
helped them in their process. I think some just want to write.
So
it's
giving them more
there
time.
for those that need to use it, not ready for it. Giving them more time to write. I probably would go back and summarize again. We have a plan. If you're not done with your plan, finish your drafting and revise, before you even start revising. That we notice that we need to have that writing done before you can ever revise. Or a good start on it before you revise.
So how likely do you think they are to be able to go into their piece of writing critically and make those revisions?
On their own.
Mm-hmm.
I bet 25% well. I think if they were sat down with a checklist and a partner and read through their writing with a partner and talked about it, maybe more will do it than.
I think it's so easy for them to be critical of your writing, of someone else's.